Welcome to Funny Old World, where we look the climate crisis dead in the eye and try and stay lighthearted about it. In this episode, I am joined by someone who has cracked the code on what we've always attempted with previous series. We're talking about climate science in a way that makes you smile. Dr. Matt Winning is a stand-up comedian, an author, a broadcaster, and an academic. And his show, Solastalgia, is running at the Soho Theatre during London Climate Action Week. And he'll be making an appearance at our live event with Law Group at Sea Containers with The Long Run, who are making this special episode possible. Thank you for joining us, Matt.
It is a pleasure.
Let me ask you, do people come up to you, say, I'm not sure if people even go to pubs that much anymore, but if you're in a pub, would someone come up to you and say, come on then, tell me a climate joke, make me laugh?
Yeah, they do. It's the worst thing in the world.
I thought so, it would be me.
It's what I hate more than anything else in the world. And normally my response is, you can pay me and I'll give you a joke, but I don't do things for free.
Only fans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I need to just be sat there. I'll tell you, Joe, I'll do whatever you like. It's the way to make some cash. I do get that a lot. I mean, you get that with all comedy. I always got that, right? And I always had a few one-liners when I would do comedy that would work like that. But even then, out of context, the delivery, it sounds like every comedian's got an excuse not to tell you a joke. But you're also like, I perform joke. Like when I tell it, it's normally at a certain point after one joke and between another joke, and there's a context to it and the delivery and all of that.
I like to ask people, what are the challenges? And then hopefully we can come to some of the solutions you might offer in our world, and then hopefully give us a little bit of hope. So what's a challenge that you're thinking about a lot at the moment, Matt?
I mean, for me, the challenge really is communication, right? And it's how do we talk about climate and all of the impacts and then what we need to do about it in a way that doesn't feel preachy, in a way that doesn't feel like it's just for certain people, and in a way that really reaches where people are already at, right? And that's why I think I spend a lot of my time doing what I do, which is kind of joking about it from a position of knowledge, to be able to, I guess, get information across to people in a way that is much more palatable and that's much more enjoyable. And there's loads and loads and loads and loads of good research and reasons as to why that's a helpful thing to do.
This is my reason for being, is communication, not just because I'm a Gemini and an astrologer told me that the other day. But it is exactly as you said. I think about people when they receive information, you want them to open up and expand and take it on rather than sort of contract and be hunched over where they can't even take on what you're saying. So you've expressed so well everything that I think we need in this world, which is talking about the tough topics in a way that's digestible, palatable, enjoyable, dare I say enjoyable.
Yeah, and it's like a connection, really. I mean, comedy in itself is like a connection, it's in its best sense, a live audience as well is the ideal way to consume that, right? I mean, a lot of comedy is essentially saying, here's this thing that you know about, but you've maybe not thought about it in this way before. And so it's sort of opening up people's minds to think differently whilst also sharing something that you both have in common. So a human connection. So really, I mean, the fact that we laugh as humans is pretty crazy, right? But it's social bonding. And so it feels like climate change is this massive threat to connection. It's a massive threat to humanity and the connection that we all have and our safety and all of these things. So it makes a lot of sense that you would use that sort of social bonding as a way to try to overcome that issue, like that enormity of the problem and of the scale. So yeah, and then there's loads of like really, really interesting things about like how people learn. So even like if you're learning in a really enjoyable environment, you're much more likely to retain information. You're much more likely to associate that subject matter with a positive experience and then feel more positive about it.
I've loved how you've expressed it, because it feels exactly that. It should be gentle connection. I think that's what, we've lost in discourse in this world. It's become so divisive.
Yeah, well.
And there's just one monologue or soliloquy versus another, often with rage bait and whatever.
Yeah.
So you're so right. I mean, that we are simply, our brains are more likely to receive it. But so why are not more people in the climate space
doing it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? For me, it's all about people, right? It's all like I think talking about the environment, and it's not that I don't love nature, right? It's not that I don't love everything that nature gives us and the spaces and being part of that, and I do, but I think it's the human, it's other people, right? That's what drives me, I think, more than anything else, is the connection to others and the connection to, and that's why I care about climate, as much as I do, is because of how it relates to people.
You're just making me think of a podcast I was listening to myself this weekend with Sarah Wilson, Wild by Sarah Wilson. It's brilliant. It's my favorite podcast far and away. She's amazing. And she was talking to a psychologist, I think, a psychologist. And I've forgotten his name. That's terrible. But what he was talking about in this world was that we've kind of neglected our primary needs, which are participation, connection, togetherness. We're focusing more on secondary needs when it comes to power, making money. And I think you're just reminding us, everything you're saying is reminding us, in order to tackle what many consider to be the greatest challenge of our time, or threat to humanity, if it's not AI and it's not, despots, is just to be human. And that there we are, riffing, being humans together. And if we can find a way to make things funny, goodness knows we need it right now. I asked you about what a challenge is. You said communication. I might ask you then, what are some solutions? Why don't you just tell me a story? And if I find it funny, great. And maybe if I pay extra on OnlyFans, you'll show me your big toe. No. Maybe you could, just talk to me about climate in a way that you think is helpful.
Well, I think, you have to balance it all, right? And the way that I then communicate the jokes, right? So I normally have, I'll set up a concept, and that ideally it's not too long a concept, but it's something about, I don't know, wildfire. The one that I'll tend to go to, and I may do this at the event that we have, is about how do we address the amount that people fly, for instance, right? And it's very tricky subject to talk about travel. We don't have a lot of technical solutions there. So my solution is that we just need to reduce the amount of travel, because some people are afraid of flying, and I think we just need to make more people afraid of flying, right? So that's the solution that I've come up with. And then I'll give some suggestions of how, glass floors on planes, those sorts of things. We need to, and it just is thinking outside the box, right? It's thinking climate solutions, but let's really kind of go for stuff that maybe people haven't thought of, right? So that's one way of talking about it. You talk about solutions, but you can get in some of the real solutions whilst giving examples of really mad solutions or whatever it is. And I do similar stuff with talking about some of the impacts of flooding and stuff. Like where I'm from in Glasgow, we're at one of the most risk places in Europe by flooding by the end of this century. So much so that local band Wet 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 have actually added an extra wet to their name to make it more scientifically accurate. Stuff like that. And I'm not delivering it the way I would normally deliver it on stage. But you get the idea. So it's like...
What was that big song?
Love Is All Around. They were the
things like that.
But they were the number... Were they not number one for... They were The one that was in Notting Hill that was like #1 for forever in the 90s. That was it. I feel it in my fingers. I feel it in my toes. And we talked about toes, me showing my toes on OnlyFans, so we've brought it right back round.
I love that. It's a beautiful storytelling. This is a masterclass in storytelling, really. This is all we need. Thank you. So, gosh, by the way, I did, of course, consume undoubtedly lots of resources. I did ask Claude, I did ask AI the other day about which were the most climate-proof places to live in the UK.
Yeah.
And most of them did tend to show up in Scotland, I will say.
That would make sense.
Yep.
So high ground, essentially.
Well, and I'm assuming colder temperatures.
Yep.
I love that you use the word solastalgia. I've written about that. I did a column dedicated to that. It's a portmanteau, isn't it, of something Latin. I've forgotten what it stands for. And of course, nostalgia. Tell us all about
solace and nostalgia. But you've written about it, and it's not a word that many people know. So when you told me that you already were well versed in it, I was like, oh, great, somebody's actually paid attention over the years. I believe it was an Australian academic. I can't remember their name, but they came up with this word to basically describe the feeling of loss that you feel when the environment, I guess your local environment mostly, has changed around you and you've lost something and you're longing for a past where the physical environment was slightly different. And so I wrote a show, and it's all about it starts with, and I won't ruin the whole show, but it starts with 250 years ago, a bit more. It starts with James Watt inventing the steam engine, and the fact that my mother's maiden name is Watt, and he was born about 8 miles away from where I'm from. And so I pose the question, potentially my family are responsible for climate change. And that's the start of the show. And then it's a show where I am waiting in my car whilst my son's being born during COVID. I couldn't attend the birth. And then I basically tell the history of oil from leaving the car because I need a wee. And then I go to some petrol stations and I talk about the history of kind of oil and lots of kind of personal stuff. And there's it's lots of storytelling essentially, and communicating kind of the finance around climate change as well. It sounds really complicated, but it's not. It's just a really nice story, kind of 3 stories really. But they talk about change, right? It's a period of my life where I was going from, not having a child to having a child, and different kind of generations, because I talk about my father quite a lot on the show as well, and also kind of losing certain parts of yourself as well. So it's sort of, that was the nostalgia's in there, definitely in the show, and kind of feeling like I'm, sort of clinging on to a safer past and not really knowing what to do going into the future. I mean, I tried to use quite big analogies in the show, so I'm kind of talking about fatherhood as an analogy for how we use energy, which is really weird. So it's kind of, there was ways of being a father in the past that were right, and there was ways of using energy in the past that were helpful, but some of those have changed, and actually how we do things going forward needs to be different, in terms of what we use for energy, but also in terms of the way that we parent and what it means to be a parent and stuff like that.
I love that analogy. So also, I love the reference to your name. I always think your name, nominative determinism, Dr. Winning.
Dr. Winning is sometimes people think that's a made up name, and I'm like, I mean, it would be a good made up name, but I'm not that on the nose, shall we say. I do have a good joke about how I wanted to have my son called Oscar when he was born, but my wife refused.
In terms of winning, what are the winning tips that you would give around, if people can tell better stories, if people want to talk about things that really matter? And a question that my my beloved John, my former podcast partner at the Standard and also my producer, he would ask you at the end of your show, maybe, what do people come up and say, I did not know that, thank you?
Yeah, there's some good facts. We can do that. There's definitely some stuff. I mean, normally it's around things like really simple facts about like, yeah, how much if you have a coffee, if you have a big latte because you're a giant baby and you need lots of milk every day to make you feel nice in your tum-tum, then your emissions are about double what they would normally be. The scale of like when you do fly, the emissions involved in that, people don't tend to quite get the difference. You know, so it's quite easy to clarify to people like the difference between doing certain things. I also have said in the show, like basically I'm like recycling. I'm not saying it's a waste of time, but it's really, really small in the grand scheme of other things that you could be doing. And people often take that away and they're like, great, I didn't know recycling was a waste of time. I'll stop doing my recycling. And I'm like, no, that wasn't really the point I was going for. But it's interesting what people take away. Like, but that's showing you that people think it's an enormous thing. And then when you tell them that it's one of the least important things you can do in terms of its actual impact, then you kind of get that response from people where they're like, oh, I'm surprised at that. And recycling's obviously, like, it's a really visual thing. So it feels like loads, you know, my recycling's full all the time. And it feels like you're doing loads of stuff compared to like when you drive a car, right? But actually, obviously, the car's considerably more polluting for the climate than, you know, your recycling.
It's funny because I remember often, you know, you get chatting to people on planes and people ask what you do. And I remember sitting next to a couple and they said, what do you do? And I said, sustainability. And you could tell they didn't, this was a couple of years ago, they didn't really know what that meant. Yeah. But when I sort of elaborated a bit, they said, oh, I remember her turning to her husband, elbowing him in the ribs and saying, oh, but we do our recycling, don't we, Keith, as we're 35,000 feet up in the air, burning untold amounts of kerosene.
Yeah. I remember laughing at some point when someone, I think it was the end of and we don't need to name the airline. I mean, I will hear British Airways, but it could have been anybody. Feel free to cut it out. But the airline at the end of it was like, if you could please give, at the end of the flight, could you please pass your newspapers to the end of the row so that we can recycle them to do our bit for the environment? And I was just like, whoa, what's happening here? How do you justify
what's actually
this?
ridiculous about that? And I'll look into it. Absolutely everything on board a plane, typically, depending on, I mean, I'm sure you know this, that it's all about the rules on wherever they land. So whatever the rules are in that country, they will landfill almost everything. So every can of Coke or every plastic bottle that you declined because you're trying to be a good person is probably going to landfill anyway. There's so many layers of nonsense.
Yeah, there's so much nonsense anyway. Yeah, you can't really escape the nonsense.
So through the nonsense, what's giving us hope?
What gives me hope isn't the thing, you know, sometimes you hear people say, oh, the next generation give me hope. And that to me is the one end of is the worst answer you can possibly give, right? Because that is not the way round that this relationship is supposed to work. The next generation don't give you hope at a time where they need hope, right? First of all, that's, the worst answer. What actually gives me hope, I think, is that people do engage when pushed. So the first thing that people come up and say to me at the end of shows and stuff like that is people will be like, oh, they're like, oh, I thought that, I mean, if it's someone that hasn't maybe, doesn't work in sustainability or climate or whatever, and they'll be like, oh, I thought I was going to hate that, but actually I really enjoyed it. It was funny and I learned something, right? And that's what I want to happen. I want someone who isn't in climate to come to a thing, to have fun and to feel positive about it and not scared going away and feel like they've taken something from it as well, right? And I can't do it. For me, I can't do any more than that. And then people often say, how screwed are we, right? So that's the next question that gets asked an awful lot. And I give them an answer where it's either they want me to say, we're screwed, it's too late, in which case they can go, great, well, I know where I stand, I don't have to do anything. or they want me to say it's going to be fine, we're all right, things are really positive, give them some hope. But that's also so that they feel like it's not on them to some extent. And so my answer is then, well, we're not screwed, but we're not screwed. It really matters what we all do and how we pull together at scale. There are a number of infinitesimal numbers of levels of screwed. And so every action that every single person in the whole world, 8 billion people, takes reduces some sort of suffering somewhere in the world at some point in time. And normally when you say that to people, they sort of look at you and they're a bit like, oh God, I wish I hadn't asked that question. Because that's a really big thing to take, to basically say every single thing that we all do matters all the time.
It's overwhelming, you mean?
So it's too overwhelming. Yeah. But it's the truth. With climate, the truth is everything matters to some degree. I mean, some things matter much more than others, but it all matters to some level, right? But the thing that gives me hope is the next thing after I've said that is that people then say, so what can I do about it, right? And it's that asking that question, people wanting to know what it is that they can do. And it's difficult because the answer, I can't give them the answer to that because it requires them to kind of figure that out themselves.
Oh, what? I thought you were going to... I was waiting.
There's
we were going to end on... Okay. 3 things? Can you suggest that I should think?
You should sit and think about climate change and work it out for yourself. That's all. Give yourself the space to think about it for a while and to go through I think every person has to go through their own kind of journey on this, and it's really difficult because you either need people to go on a journey or you need to make things so simple for people that it's like somebody said this before, but like a menu, like a choice. The difference, and in fact, it's a UCL academic I'm a good colleague of, a guy called Chris DeMere. It's the difference between a menu and a list of ingredients. And what people want is a menu to choose from solutions. But what you actually need to give people is a list of ingredients or things that people can then make their own solutions from, or like what their meaning, what their role is in creating something that will help the climate, right? And so that's the difference between the two things. So when I get asked what's the best things you can do, I'm like, well, right, if you, I don't know, drive an SUV, sell it and buy a smaller secondhand electric car, there's things you can do, but it depends on who you are and
exactly
what you can get from taking these actions. And if I just tell you what to do and you do them, you're not buying into the process. So
that's a perfect example, because my response to you saying that is, it depends on the car, it depends on its life cycle, it depends where you live, it depends on the infrastructure. Exactly. So what you've done is modeled how I think we all need to, I'm going to prescribe something to everybody, is be curious and just constantly be looking at what are the challenges, what are potential solutions, how am I thinking, every single day is just one signpost after another of you could do this or you could do this. And that is overwhelming.
Oh, so overwhelming.
Right?
Yeah, but it's a personal, like, who are you? What is your skill set? Where do you live? Where do you work? Right? All of these questions are the most important to being able to answer the question of what can you do about it. There is no box ticking exercise where you will be part of everything. You find your own journey, right? And it might be a big journey or it might be a small journey, but regardless, it's absolutely be curious and be creative. And if you can do something in a place where you live, if you can make it part of your community and you can make it part of something that you can see tangible changes, then that's fantastic. And if not, if you are a CEO of a steel company, right, then what you can do as an individual is probably considerably more than if you're someone that works in a nursery, right? But everybody can do something. It's just what's the context and where do you live and what power do you have and how do you connect to it? And it's difficult because some people might not have the time to connect, right? And some people might not have the space, or some people might intentionally not allow that space in because it's difficult.
And even just coming to listen to you, getting a ticket to your show, or coming to our event, Nature in the City.
Please do.
Oh, I hope that's something. Give you lots to think about.
What gives you hope? I mean, I care about what gives you hope.
Thank you. You know, I did hear something on the news this week. After years of me trying to explain to people how important mangroves are, we're losing them to property development and coastal, shrimp farming. I heard on the news that finally they're not in the decline; they're in the increase. And that really gave me hope, because we need those little coastal protectors. And I think people don't realize, obviously mangroves are a big sequesterer, which is always an unnecessary word, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sucker of carbon, storer of carbon.
Giant sucker.
So that's, when you hear these stories about nature, how we were absolutely devastating it, 80% satellite pictures showed 80% of mangroves had been lost. When you hear the good news and there's an uptick, that gives me hope.
I'm going to give you something right back that's at the exact other end of the spectrum, and not in terms of hope, but it's basically finance, right? And it's the fact that the Bank of England had some rules that came in about financial disclosure, and companies had to basically improve their analysis of risk throughout the whole bank related to climate by, I think it was the middle of last week. And it's a really simple piece of, kind of legislation, simple thing that they have to do, but it gives me a lot of hope that at a global level, and like in terms of banking sector, that there still can be change, right? At a time where a lot of the world's financing to climate change is been kind of under threat, and banks coming together to try and work on this. For me, I think this is like an enormous thing where an enormous amount of change can actually happen that doesn't really get talked about.
Well, that's what we need. I mean, if there's something we need, it's good rules based on financial systems favoring climate solution investment. That's giving me hope. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure.
Thanks so much to Dr. Winning, to Matt. You can come and hear him, meet him when we do our event at Sea Containers in London Climate Action Week with The Long Run, who made this episode possible. Thank you so much. And remember, share this episode. That's a form of climate activism. Following us, subscribing, just as Matt was saying, communication, the power of communication. It's so important. Every like, every comment helps this message travel a little bit further. So if Funny Old World does something for you, please support us and share. Thanks so much.